the Go Berserk with Email podcast with Navy nuclear engineer turned email software developer, Troy Broussard. So calm.
I'm pissed off, but I'm telling this because I am teaching you how to think differently and how to test differently.
So patient.
And Ben, that's put $500,000 into this company too, is being told that nobody can find the goddamn bug.
So charitable.
I'm going to start paying bounties every time somebody finds a bug. We're going to deduct $10 for that week.
So trusting.
Do not assume that anything works. Assume that nothing works.
And so sweet, it makes sugar taste just like salt.
I want to play into the sexiness of marketing automation, but I also want to slap the complexity of it.
The Go Berserk with Email podcast begins now.
All right, we're going to have some fun today because I threw Jonathan the hell off of the podcast today, and we decided we're going to do it our own. And I say we because as I'm recording this podcast, I am sitting in Gold Beach at Ben's house overlooking the ocean. It's a little foggy here today. Ben, you could have arranged a little better climate.
That's because Nicole's here.
Nicole's
She
here.
brings the clouds. She brings all this misery and depression.
So we are going to have some fun today. We've got Nicole, the COO of Berserker Mail and Learnistic and some of my other companies, including my trading company, Low Stress Options. She's with us everywhere. You just can't get rid of Nicole. That's what the woman actually has a tattoo of Berserker Mail on her arm. So, I mean, on her wrist, right? Could you ask for a more dedicated COO? No. And we're graced by the lovely Stefania as well, who's welcomed us into her home. And I've got everybody wired up. And, you know, don't go to the bathroom on us, Stefania, in the middle of the recording, because it is being recorded. All right. All right.
We got paper cups. It's all good.
That's right. It's like flying in the airplane. You got to plan it ahead. You got to plan ahead. So, Ben, why don't you get us kicked off here?
All right. I'd rather kick you guys all out of here, but that's fine too. So yesterday, and we thought this would be a really good topic because Nicole and Stefania are very opinionated. However, you guys don't get to hear from them too much. You hear from Troy all the time, obviously on the podcast. You probably hear from me if you're on my list. Okay, so I have opinions on this. Troy's opinion. We've been trolled about our opinions on what I'm about to say. We've had email gurus try to discredit us for what we're about to talk about. And the louder they whine and cry about it, the more we're proven right. And the other ESPs are now admitting it. And what I'm talking about is images in emails potentially screwing up email deliverability.
Is this where I'm supposed to cue all of those massive, like, boo hiss sounds on the podcast? Boo hiss.
Well, you know, our fans, our favorite trolls will do that for us. But my point is this. So, you know, a lot of them, I don't know about all of them, but I know some of them definitely say this on their own websites, that you got to be careful. You don't want to make them too big. You don't want to make them over 50 kilobytes each because, and I'll quote one of them, it will mess up your email deliverability. And Troy, to his credit, when we were first talking about this very early on, before it launched, I remember this very clearly. He said, look, I decided we're not going to allow images. Now, I didn't really have a dog in the fight. I didn't care. I didn't use them. I've never seen a reason to use them. It's like, to me, it's just like B pile mail when you do use them. And I'm an A pile mail kind of guy, meaning I want my emails to look like it could be an email from a friend at a glance. And I said, why? And he said, well, because there's going to be a lot of deliverability issues that, you know, we just don't have to deal with. And we don't have to deal with spam and porn, spam and everything on the platform. We don't have to police the platform. We don't have to do any of that stuff. We don't have to think about it. We just, you know, our people like know how to write. They're not low IQ. They know how to write. They don't need images. They don't need memes. Our people technically tend to not rely on vanity metrics like opens and clicks, you know, and it's not like you never want to do opens and clicks. I mean, but even bots are now opening your emails and clicking things. So it's very, very unreliable. So very early on, he's like, let's not do it. And I remember, I think it was that same day, I don't know, it was the day after, when that guy at Roosh V, remember, I was like, it was like the day after, and I said, look what happened to Roosh V. You know, Roosh V was very controversial back in the day in his pickup artist days. And so he gets deplatformed pretty regularly. And he was using Aweber. Now, he put a meme in an email. I remember this. And it was a political meme. And, Aweber kicked him off. And, they didn't just like boot him off, and they gave him his list and his data and all that. But, I said, look, Troy, this would not have happened had he been using Berserker Mail, because we wouldn't have allowed it. You just described the meme or something. And so anyway, long story short, I know that, for example, at least it was on their active campaign's own thing, said, look, keep your images a certain like 50 kilobytes or something, or else it could affect spams. This came from their own help desk. At least one of my customers forwarded it to me. That may have changed since then. I don't want to quote it, but they all know it. And now Aweber has been saying the same thing. One of our Berserker Mail customers sent it to me yesterday, Ray Kahn. And I sent it to you guys. And I said, look, now even Aweber's having to admit it, that, and nothing. And by the way, I'm not one of these guys that badmouths other ESPs. I think they have to do what they got to do to protect their platform. And I think they're all seeing the same thing, that like, if we don't want our deliverability to tank across the board, we got to at least encourage people maybe to not use so many images or at all. And that's kind of what you were talking about, Troy, in your email today, which I thought was very interesting.
Yeah, the difference is that we take it to the extreme. And I think that if you just logically and scientifically look at this, and I do have the history to back this up from what I've done for clients sending large volume, but you don't really need to see that. Logically, you can draw the conclusion that if the competitors and all the industry is saying reduce the image file size is going to improve your deliverability, well, then I like to take things to the extreme. What if you reduce it to 0? As in, you never include an image. What's going to happen? And when you do that, that's where you see kind of another level. You get a benefit from reducing the file size. Of course you do. And, as you make these incremental improvements, as you lower it from 400 kilobytes to 200 to 100 to 50 to 0, you're going to see different levels of impact in deliverability. Now, all of our competitors, they don't want to tell you what you need to hear. They want to tell you what's going to make it easy for them to sell. And they're not going to tell you don't use images, because most people don't want to hear that.
Right.
Now,
we would actually increase if we were just going after that, we would just allow images, take the hit in deliverability, and probably have another tier that you could use that doesn't allow email or images. And why screw with all that? Just don't use them.
Yeah, the difference is, like, it's the tagline of our company. Yeah. We're a marketing company built by marketers for marketers, and we do things the way that we do them in our own company, and that's the practices that we set. So it's a pretty logical conclusion. We know there's all kinds of empirical evidence that large images have a huge impact in deliverability. What we get the trolls fighting us on all the time is they think that if you reduce the file size down, that then it's an irrelevant issue. But it's simply not true. It's just a less relevant issue, but it's not an irrelevant.
It's good, better, best, the way I see it. Like, it's yeah. I'm curious from Nicole here, because nobody ever gets to hear from Nicole. Now they get to hear from Nicole. On the help desk, do you get people asking about images ever? Or are they pretty much on our side with this? Or do they complain about it?
Hardly any complaints. In fact, I don't think we've really had more than
So nobody's saying
not a complaint at all.
So nobody's saying, well, if you guys allowed images, I'd be making more sales.
No, never. And no one's ever said that. We get questions. Like, obviously, people will ask about it and like ask why and so forth. And once it's explained, everyone's just fine with it. They're completely on board. If anything, we give them tips and tricks and information on how they can write better emails rather than relying on an image that's not going to help them in the first place.
And that's really the issue, right? And that's what I say all the time. Yeah, you can put a cutesy little, cat meme to get somebody to click, but that's the lowest form of engagement possible. You're engaging that marshmallow test flunky that has, just instant gratification. They're not the person that's going to read a sales page when they get to the other side. You want to engage the people that are actually reading your content. And you do that by, actually writing content. Crazy how that works.
Who is saying this now? I'm too old to understand everything the Zoomers think. I don't want to speak for Zoomers. So I asked Daniel Throssell, who I believe is a Zoomer. And he was saying, because originally he was kind of hesitant about all this, right?
Yeah, for sure.
But then he started using it and he started seeing, I don't want to speak for him. I'm pretty sure he said his deliverability was higher. He was getting emails from people who were like, I don't remember being on your list. And that was a good thing. It means he was actually getting his emails to people on his list. And his mindset, his theory on this was because images appeal to people who like to scroll, like on TikTok. People have like TikTok brain. They just want to keep scrolling like they do on Facebook and Twitter and TikTok. They're not really engaging with the content. They're not reading it. That's not what it's for. It's for scrolling. And so if that's who you're going after, because you just want views and all that, maybe it's a good thing. But with email, you don't get paid on views. You get paid on sales.
I would say the YouTube comparison is really apropos because it would be the comparison of deep learning versus casual learning, which would be a comparison of a 20-minute YouTube video versus a 30-second YouTube short. When you go and watch a 30-second YouTube short, it's a casual experience, so much so that the only effective YouTube shorts are the ones that have really good moving motion captions, because half the time people are watching them muted. They're not even, they're doing exactly the behavior you're talking about.
They actually read the text. They're not reading the captions.
Yeah, 3/4 of the time. It's on mute.
Yeah. And so that's where you get into the casual learning side.
Well, besides that, I've seen the biggest argument, or the type of person who's going to make the biggest argument against having a no images policy are people in e-commerce. Like there's people who are saying, oh, well, they need to actually see the product before they click through. Or even you had one instance where somebody in the Berserker Mail Meat Hall brought up that the images from their blog posts keep engagement or whatever it is. But what I don't understand is that, especially using e-commerce, is like, you want to get the person off of their email onto your website, especially if you have multiple products, if you sell all sorts of stuff, you want to get them from that platform onto your platform. So what I don't understand about that argument is okay, fine. You want to have the big splashy 80% off sale GIF or something. I don't know if that's what it is, or you want to have like, oh, well, it's this handbag or whatever it is. But if you're trying to get them off of the email onto your website, like why not make that as frictionless as possible? So that way they end up scrolling your website instead of just clicking through to the next email or deleting it or anything. Like I can't tell you how many times that I've, gotten a sales email or something like that, meaning like, there's, I don't know, it could be a sales on kids' clothes or something for Willis. I'll scroll through the email and then just click away from it because I'm like, oh, there's nothing here that I want. But if it was just a text-only email saying that it's blowout sale, I'll get, drawn to the website, and then I can scroll from there and maybe I'll see something else, And then this is also why SMS, for instance, is so effective, because you just get that short little blast, go here, this thing is back, available in stock, or this is on sale, or whatever it is. This is a new release. And you click through without thinking about it. But like that, it brings you again onto their platform. You scroll through what they have rather than just saying, okay, on to the next, and just keep, blindly scrolling.
So what I would say here is that when you use a text format, a textual format, you are pushing the decision to purchase or not onto your website, where you can help them make that decision the best way you can. That's where you've got the comparative of this TV versus that TV, of, the 50-inch versus the 65-inch, and you can do all of the comparisons. You can do all the selling on your website. But when you put the image of the 50 and the 65-inch TV in the email itself, you're giving them the instant gratification of, oh, no, I don't want this right now. And they're clicking away. They're never even clicking through. They're making a decision, and they're making an uninformed decision because they're using the visual information to just check out of the decision entirely, instead of having copy and sales copy and a story that pushes them to the website, whose job is really to do the sale. You don't really ever want to be selling in your email. The email is just to get them to the page where they can buy. And I think that's what people really miss with using these images, or the connection that they're missing when they want to use images in the email. You're actually pushing the wrong decision at the wrong time. You're getting people to disqualify themselves from a sell without the right information.
Well, you know what some of our distinguished trolls will say, well, I've tested it. You're guessing.
Open
When you
rates.
say I've tested it. And it's like, well, okay, what did you test? Well, I've had clients like this, very savvy marketers. I'm telling you, I'm very, very savvy people will say this. And I remember having this conversation with a specific client that was doing like $300,000 a month, right? And they're like, look, if we put the image of the guru in the email and all that, it increased the clicks by 5%. And I remember asking, well, what does it do with the sales? And they never bothered. No one ever talks about the sales. Now, if they do, fine. I don't care, whatever. But for the average person with a freaking 2,000 person list, they're not getting you tell me, are they getting a statistically relevant test anyway?
You've got to have at least 200 sales to even have statistically relevant data. Now, 200 sales requires how many thousands of clicks? I mean, this is massive data. You cannot do this on a little 5,000 person email list and get statistically relevant data that even holds a cup of water from a scientific analysis. In order to get real data, you have to have really, really large sample sets. And people don't even, I mean, this gets into the whole concept of split testing and how to scientifically test. Most people don't even know how to do that. They just split their list randomly in half and they think that's a split. It's not. If you're going to do a split test, you need to age the lists. So both of your splits have to be broken up where you have about the same age of duration on your list. So if you've got one split that has everybody that opted in last week and another split that has, most of the people have been on the list for 5 years, you're going to get very different responses from that. So when you do just some random split of every other contact or something, you're not getting proper age-based distribution of your splits, which makes your data completely irrelevant. That's the first thing. People that's the most basic thing. But then it's more sophisticated than that, because when you're looking at a split test that is scientifically relevant, you have to look at the destination of where the email is going to. If you're doing one split test that is all jammed up with Yahoo addresses and the other split test has all Gmail, you're not representing an equal distribution of your list to both splits. And so you're going to draw conclusions that are completely bogus. So, I mean, this is one of the reasons when we built this feature for split testing into Berserker Mail that we made it very, very robust, because when you create a split test with us, we allow you to assign the logic that we use for the split. And we say, do you want to split by account age? Do you want to split by email domain, or do you want to combine the two? And we put that in so that you get a much more statistically relevant, split test in the first place. But even all of that, even if you do all of that right, if you've only got a list of 5,000 or even 30,000 people, you're not likely going to be driving nearly enough clicks or enough sales to make any logical extrapolation from that data.
Here's a big one. One of my favorite, well, why does Amazon and Walmart do it? And you were telling us about how they buy their way into inboxes.
Yeah. Well, first of all, you have to understand they're doing it for branding. They have brand, and everybody talks to me. This is the biggest horseshit lie of internet marketing, Ben. Like, we get this all the time, and you've written books on branding, so I shouldn't really be talking about this.
No, go ahead. This is
everybody likes to talk about, oh, I'm a brand. Oh, you're a brand. Go on to Shark Tank and see if you're a brand. They'll laugh your ass off the episode. Nobody's heard of your shit. You're a cockroach. We're going to squash you like a cockroach. That's, what Mr. Wonderful says. You ain't a brand. You're a cockroach. Walmart is a friggin' brand. They can afford to just slap Walmart on the page, and that's going to command attention. So first of all, you have the brand recognition aspect. That's one of the reasons that they do it. But the second thing is, absolutely, they can just buy their way to the top of your inbox. Do you not think that if little old ABC email platform could make some more revenue by giving preferential treatment to Best Buy and Walmart and Apple, do you not think that they'll increase their company revenue just by bumping them in the inbox? Of course they will.
Facebook does the same thing, right? I mean, they all do it. This is what happens. Hell, you can even take this back to comic books. They stopped running the little classified X-ray glasses ads, and they just took the corporate advertising, because why would they want to screw with that shit when you got Kellogg's cereal is going to pay them a crap load of money, and there's no, it makes their prestige better and everything. Like it's all.
Yeah, we got this objection with Facebook all the time with Learnistic. We got this objection, well, why can't you guys do XYZ because Facebook does it?
Yeah.
What they don't realize is they think that just because Facebook's in the App Store and we're in the App Store that we play by the same rules. They don't. Facebook has their own custom terms of service negotiated with Apple for which they pay who knows what, some undisclosed tens of millions, if not hundreds of millions of dollars, in order for Apple to relax the standards and everything else. I mean, are you kidding me? You can't even mention the word COVID on Facebook without getting kicked off. But Facebook can go ahead and have live beheadings and people killing themselves in suicide and not get booted off the platform. So it's a completely different set of rules.
When we opened the Berserker Mill Meat Hall, the very first post I put in there was the story about Roosh V. And they wouldn't post it because Roosh V is just apparently just too controversial. Way too many. But yeah, you can put a beheading on there. Like it's silly to look at these big platforms and try to compare it. It doesn't,
You're comparing not apples to oranges. You're comparing apples to elephants. It's just completely irrelevant.
Just why I don't understand why they're trying, instead of competing with, let's say, like, okay, for instance, social media at this point, in the very beginning, let's say like 2015, for instance, like I have a background with working with life coaches who built their businesses on social media. You can't do that anymore, right? Because the algorithm and everything, like it's too much to compete with other posts and things like that. And it's vying for other people's attention. So I don't understand why, instead of saying, well, because Facebook allows you to do this, why can't we do this? Instead of just becoming a platform unto yourself, and not to be, again, laughed out of the room like they would in Shark Tank, but instead of saying, okay, I want to keep the person in their email, right? Like just, again, going back to scrolling and all that, getting them out of their inbox as quickly as possible. And one of the tweets recently from the Berserker Mail Twitter account was a poll asking about what is the things that they want to learn most, right? And I forgot the other ones, but the one that won the most was world building. And one of the aspects of world building, which I know, being in the room with Ben is, he's being the master of it.
If they weren't my customers, they wouldn't even know what that is.
Right. But the thing is about world building, it's an immersive experience. And what more can be an immersive experience than taking someone out of their email inbox into your website and just keeping them there? Like, that's what I don't understand. Rather than saying, oh, I want to make it a passive experience, make it an immersive experience.
Well, so Ken McCarthy, you guys know who Ken is, but I'll give some context just so the listener understands where I'm coming from. Founding father of internet marketing. This is the guy that Time Magazine even gives credit to. He's the one that figured out the click-through as a metric, for marketing, which seems obvious now, but it wasn't then. You could fit about 4 people around a table who understood how to sell on the internet in 1994. He was one of them. He even had like a newspaper called the Internet Gazette at the time. And, he said him and his friends were like the laughing stock of Silicon Valley for the stuff they were saying, selling online. Anyway, he's been doing this a long time. He's the founding father of email marketing. He was the first guy to go to AOL's CEO at the time and say, hey, why don't you mail your list? It's obvious to us now, but it wasn't then. He's the founding father of video marketing. He was literally writing about this in 1994 when it took 3 hours for a 5 little megabyte clip just to, and he said, one day we'll be able to do this stuff. So I'm just giving context here. He understands this stuff. And his whole thing from the very beginning with email, and you can do what you want with this information, is the whole point is you want them to click over to something that gives them a good experience. Then they're more likely to want to keep reading your emails. Naturally, it's all very common sense. There's no guessing here. You don't need to run an A/B split test for this. It's just freaking common sense. Give them a good experience every day in the email, a reason to click over to something. They get there and it's a good, whether it's a sales page or whatever, it's what they want at that time. That's the whole immersive experience I think you're talking about, Stefania. And that's, you're not going to get that with a meme. It doesn't work that way. So I don't care what your click-through is and all that crap. What is the experience? It's not about a one-time sale. This is a long game. And so anyway, what you said reminded me of that.
What you just said about the long game, I think that's the critical one. And, I'm probably going to get a bunch of people pissed off because I tend to attack copywriters a lot because I just mock them.
I do too.
Because,
that's okay. I can't stand those bastards. Let me tell you.
There's this mentality that they think that their email copy is what's creating the sale. And that there's a truth to that, but it's not the email that they write today. It's the emails they've been cumulatively writing for the last year.
Attribution is what is your thing. Like,
right.
Yeah.
So it really comes down to like understanding that it's a long-term game. You're wanting to build the relationship up and not the get the click because I'm going to get them on my sales page because I paid $50,000 to XYZ copywriter for this sales page and it's going to convert. How many times have you seen that? It just, people have that mindset.
I've seen copywriters take credit. My emails made, $400,000 for this client. Roar! It's like, no, dude, you didn't create that. You're not, the client took all the risk. They created the offer. They have the marketplace positioning. It's their list. You're a freaking parasite, like all copywriters. And I was a parasite as a copywriter too. It's not an insult. You're a parasite. And that's okay. You need a parasite in the ecosystem, but that's all you are.
Well, these are the same copywriters who say they're $800 million copywriters, which is, disingenuous at best, right?
Yeah.
But the point that
unless you have $800 million, unless you're Bill freaking Bonner, shut up. Unless you're in a chateau in France because you wrote a sales letter, that built Agora. You're not any $100 million copywriter. You're a parasite, and it's okay.
So the key thing about building an e-commerce brand is to build a fan base and then sell them anything. Right? You can't get the product and then hope to find fans to buy it. The key to have a successful e-commerce brand is to build up a large fan base and then sell them things. And you can't do that through images, through emails. You have to do that through building a relationship with conversations and so forth. So the whole thing about not being able to use Berserker Mail to, build your e-commerce brand because we don't have images is crap.
Well, this is very true. And this is why this was brought up in the mead hall, remember? And I was refuting it point by point because I'm like, if you needed images to sell, then I guess Gary Halbert's, sales letter that built the $700 million coat of arms business shouldn't have worked because it's one page of typed. It looks like a real letter to somebody. There's no images on it. They used to, how much money was done just by broadcast fax? I don't think there were images. I'm not saying there's not a place in a sales letter. There is, but you don't need it. It's not like, look at half of Gary Halbert's stuff. It wasn't rife with images. And, we're talking email. There's a whole other, it's supposed to be a light, fast media. It was never you talk about this, how this AMP thing was, they do AMP now, or it's like a website in your inbox. It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah. I think for me, the proof is in the pudding. And that comes back to what is the relationship you have with your list. When I launched Low Stress Trading, I launched it to a list of 137 people, a sub list. They were only my active subscribers that I had in one of my coaching groups. And those were the only people that I launched that to. I didn't have any beautiful sales page. I woke up at 2:02 a.m. that morning with just an epiphany of what storyline I wanted to use to sell the program. I wrote it in about 4 hours. It's about 27 pages long of copy. And I was so eager to get it out and to test it. And all I wanted to do was test the success of it. I ended up doing over 6 figures launching that product to a list of 137 people. There wasn't a sales page. There wasn't a checkout. It was nothing more than a PDF that I wrote in one single stream of consciousness with all kinds of typos and errors and everything else, and emailed them a download link to download the PDF. All right.
Old school web 1.0.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So would I have been able to pull that off to my whole list? No, it wouldn't have worked. It worked because it went to a subset of a very actively engaged list that I had a multi-year relationship. Some of these people had been in a 30K mastermind with me for 10 years. I had deep relationship with these people. So was the sales page the thing that won? No, it happened because of the relationship. And I think that's what I have this huge philosophical objection with most copywriters is they think it's their copy that wins. And it can over time, but it's the relationship that really wins. The sales page to me is probably less than 20% of the effectiveness of the sale.
It's true. The copy comes more into play to an ice cold lead who doesn't know who you are. And especially if you're competing against another copywriter, yeah, the copy's everything at that point.
Yeah.
Right? It's ice cold. I mean, that's the only, that's a fair assessment, but we're not in that. Even with our direct mail, our whole goal is to get, for low stress trading, is to get them onto an email list to build a relationship. Like we were talking to Craig Simpson about that. Like this is our goal. Gary Bencivenga was talking about this 20 years ago. He said, this is back when, no one was thinking of this stuff. And he was like, look, the future is using direct mail to drive people into an easing, email list so you could build a relationship and sell them over time. And that's what it is. It's a relationship. You can have the crappiest copy in the world and it won't matter if you have a good relationship.
All right. So we've hit this from every way that you can skin the digital cat at this point. But, hopefully you've come away from this episode with some understanding of our philosophy about images and why we don't use them and why, in a large extent, it's not really beneficial for you to use them either. And I would say that, if you just look at the fact that if images were going to make our business, Ben and I would both be adamant about using them if they contributed to our bottom line. But we focus on the bottom line and we focus on what drives sales, not pretty cat memes. And it's never been the image that drives the sale. It's always been the relationship and the copy. So, my final piece of advice before I wrap it up here, Ben, is just, get better at writing.
That's the whole thing. Nobody wants to write. They want to prompt everything with AI and do edgelord images with AI. And it's all stupid. Just freaking learn how to have a relationship with your list. It's not rocket science. And that's my final. If that doesn't rile some trolls up, I don't know what will. We welcome it and bring it on. Grunt.
And there you have it. Alive, the first and only, probably the last for a while. It's too friggin' long of a flight to get out here to see Ben, so I'm going to call this a wrap. Thanks, everybody. Tune into a next one, and maybe we'll let Jonathan back on the next episode. To get a free Berserker Mail test drive with no credit card required, go to startmytestdrive.com. From there, you can play around inside the platform without pressure. Load up emails and campaigns to see how simple the interface is, and get comfy with everything before deciding to join. That's startmytestdrive.com.
This is thepodcastfactory.com.